have you had experiences in like the dating circles around like race and racism and how that shows up?
It's going back to my relationship junior high school that I didn't want to talk about. but I ended up dating out of my race. I dated somebody who was white, and it was very strange. I did not feel accepted by that person's family at all. And even like to this day, like my town is very small, so everyone knows each other and everyone sees each other, like at the grocery store, at the ice cream parlor. I remember specifically, it was like one summer and I was with my friend and we like stopped for ice cream. I had seen at the time my ex's family, like his mom and his dad, and I had spent time with them before, and like they know my face, and like you would see like if you see somebody that you know and you're out somewhere, you're gonna be like, oh hi, like how are you? Like obviously I don't expect to have like a grand conversation, but they just looked at me, looked away, and just kept walking, and I was like, so that said it all. It was very disheartening because I was like, I never did anything to hurt anyone in the situation, or like I was never disrespectful, at least in my knowledge. But it was definitely like, wow, like I can see that you never, like that gave me closure as to like you never really accepted me. So
I would say growing up, I went to also like a PWI growing up, and then I came to PWI college. And like relationships have been like kind of hard because sometimes I have to think back in my head thinking like, will they like me because of the color of my skin? That's something that's a constant question that's always popping up. I know in high school, my senior year, I liked a guy and he was like, I like you too, but my parents don't like black people, so we can't date. And so like, it was kind of disheartening to me being like, okay, well, that's kind of disappointing that like we won't be able to be together because of his parents. And like here coming to college too, I also think the same thing, like because of that one situation.
It's the same thing for me. And I think that's why I haven't really tried dating at all, because that's just a whole nother, I don't have time for that. And it's also disheartening. It quite frankly sucks. Just to be like, do you like me? Just in general, like point blank, do you like me, period? Because you can say, oh, you're a great person, I like your personality, but sorry, at the end of the day, I am Asian. And it's also like a question for me sometimes, like, is it a fetish? Like, is it something that, you know, you are entitled to having a type of preference, but is it, you know, crossing that line?
Definitely. And I feel like, unfortunately, like that is a part of that experience, right? Like for dating, especially as a woman of color, and thinking about like conversations that I would even have with men and the things that they would say, like they don't want to date somebody who's too dark, but they'll date a Latina because she's exotic. And, Asian women are submissive. Black women, y'all are too much. So like all of these things that like that play a role in how they date, and they're just like, well, it's just my preference. I'm like, it's actually racist. Like what you're saying is racist. And I think a lot of times people mask that, those racist sentiments, those racist stereotypes and preference.
I never really thought about it like that. But now that you like bring it up, I'm like, no, that makes total sense. When they do say Latina women are exotic, or like black women are way too much, they're too loud, they're too out there. Like now, if you really peel back the layers, it's really racist.
Absolutely. And I remember like talking to someone, because this was when I was an undergrad, and we were talking about dating preferences. And one of my friends at the time, he's Jamaican, he said that like, if I walked into a room and there was a white woman standing next to me, he would approach that white woman because he wouldn't, and if he didn't know me, he would think that she would have the better personality. I was like, well, that's dumb, but let's peel that back. Like, where is this coming from? And he was just like holding firm that like he's convinced that because she's white, she would have the better personality. And I think like, when we talk about like peeling back the layers, it's like he already created a story about black women that is untrue, that is rooted in racist stereotypes. And I think on the other end of that, we also talked about like, one of the things that he would say is like, oh, white women love him. So I was like, okay, that's fine. But also, what are some ways that you're being hypersexualized in this space? Like, what are ways that you're being fetishized in this space?
Yeah, adding on to like what you were saying, my recent ex, one time he was like, I think you should go for black women because they're aggressive and loud, but like you're different though, you're different. And then I was like, that's interesting. And I was thinking about our relationship, and I was like, wait, so like, he said this to me. So then I like brought up the issue of politics, and I was like, okay. He goes, well, he said, I don't think Black Lives Matter. Like, see all these different things. And I was like, interesting. I'm in a relationship with this guy that's saying all these problematic things. And so obviously it didn't last, but like, it's just interesting to see, like, I don't think I'm like loud or aggressive, but like he has this thought of his mind because it's a stereotype that black people are like loud and aggressive. And so it was just kind of disheartening to like like see that and hear that from him.
That makes a lot of sense because what I hear is like it sounds like he separated you from like all the other Black people. So like even though you look Black, you're not really Black because this is what it means to be Black. And it's just like it's so weird. And it's also weird when people, especially men, give women compliments by insulting other women.
Like, you're pretty for a Black person, or you're pretty for like an Asian. We get that all the time.
And also, that ties into the infamous question, where are you from?
Yeah.
I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, thank you very much.
Right.
And then they're like, where are you really from? Boston, Massachusetts. You want to see my birth certificate?
Right.
And you really think about those conversations, and that's why I feel like I just stay clear of those conversations, period.
Like, especially when it comes to like dating apps, if you like use that, like sometimes people use that as like a pickup line, saying like those like famous quote, like, you're pretty for this one color. Like, I have jungle fever, like things like that.
Oh
Those
my
like
God.
the pickup lines guys think are like good to use when they're not really good to use.
First,
So,
they
like,
think they're funny, but
Yeah.
they're not.
There's one that says, if you were a slave, I'd pick you.
Yes.
Like, I'm trying to figure out why you would say something like that. Like, it's not cute, it's not funny, it's just a turn off.
It's
It's,
the
and that's
audacity.
honestly probably traumatic for some people to
It is.
hear.
Yeah.
Sam, it might have been you who said it, just like not knowing how to respond when those things happen.
Yep.
It's because like, yeah, they're microaggressions and like do you always want to go off? Not necessarily. Sometimes it's easier just to walk away from the situation, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating as you continue to navigate like this dating or relationship sphere, you know, like these things like, okay, well, if they're white, are they gonna like me for me? And what are their parents gonna think? And just all of these things that come into play when thinking about being in a relationship with someone. Because like, yeah, you're in a relationship with someone, but also like their family does matter, right? Especially when you think about race and racism and how that shows up.
I'm sorry, but if your family doesn't like me, like, or like your family is not accepting of me, I don't think I can do this. Like, I can't, like, I'm not gonna feel comfortable walking into someone's home and like, hi, and like just have a two-faced like feeling about being there, or the way that they're treating me. So like, if someone's family isn't accepting, it's like, what's even kind of the point? Even though like there may be relationships where it's like, well, I don't care what my family thinks, or like,
Right.
but it's still like they're still there.
Yeah.
But it's also like thinking about it in the future too. What if you have kids? Like, what it puts them and you in that situation of like,
Right.
I love you, and I know that you may not care what your family thinks, but that's your family, and we also have our family. So I think that it's very tricky to navigate, and you have to have those conversations very early on, which is hard. Like, you're on a first date, so what? Like, what's your situation with your family? Like, and it's like, you don't want to get into that type of conversation, but I feel like for me personally, like, I need to know that stuff now because I'm not wasting my time and I'm not wasting your time.